The text message on Sarah Martinez's phone read, "Mama, can you bring me school supplies tomorrow? Everyone else has new backpacks." Sarah stared at those words, sitting in her car outside the Desert Star truck stop, feeling the 115-degree Texas heat pressing against the windows even with the AC running. For 3 years since her husband Miguel died in a highway accident, she'd been picking up every extra shift she could find. Today was August 25th. School started in 2 days. And this double shift, 14 hours on her feet in the brutal August heat, would earn her exactly $180. Just enough for Lily's backpack, notebooks, and the clothes her 7-year-old daughter desperately needed. What Sarah would witness in the next 4 hours would force her to choose between staying safe and staying silent. And that choice would save a life. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. Enjoy the story. "Please, I know someone's watching. Please see me." Those were the words Kayla Marie Foster had been repeating in her head for 18 days. 18 days since a man named Derek, who wasn't really named Derek, had drugged her coffee at a gas station, and she'd woken up zip-tied to a radiator in a Denver basement. 18 days of being told she belonged to them now. 18 days of threats, psychological abuse, being moved from house to house like cargo. And now, on day 18, she was in the back seat of a car heading toward her final destination, Salt Lake City, where a buyer had paid $15,000 for her. She didn't know his name. She didn't know what he'd do to her. She only knew that once she reached him, she'd never be found. The car had been parked outside the truck stop for 20 minutes. The August heat was unbearable. Even with the windows cracked, the temperature inside had to be over 130 degrees. Kayla's vision was blurring. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. She could feel her heart racing too fast, her skin burning. Heat stroke. She recognized the symptoms from a health class she'd taken years ago when life was normal, when she was just a waitress in Omaha, with dreams of maybe going to college someday. Richard Voss, the man in the expensive polo shirt sitting in the driver's seat, finally spoke. "We're going in. They've got AC. You can get water. But you try anything, and I mean anything. Your parents' house burns down tonight with them inside. We have people watching. Understand?" Kayla nodded. She didn't have the strength to do anything else. They pulled her out of the car. Her legs barely held her weight. Dale Kruger, the transporter wearing a trucking company jacket, grabbed her arm to steady her. Not because he cared. Because damaged merchandise was worth less. When they walked through the door of the Desert Star Truck Stop Cafe at 4:37 p.m., the air conditioning hit Kayla like a wall of ice. She wanted to cry from relief, but her body was too dehydrated even for tears. Sarah was refilling iced tea for a table of truckers when the door opened. She glanced up out of habit, waitress instinct, always aware of new customers, and froze. 3 people walked in, 2 men and a woman. But something was wrong. The woman was young, maybe early 20s, thin in a way that wasn't natural. Her blonde hair was plastered to her head with sweat, despite the Arctic AC inside. Her face was flushed bright red, lips cracked and white-crusted at the corners. When she moved toward a corner booth, her hands shifted slightly, and Sarah saw them. Zip ties. Thin plastic bands around both wrists, partially hidden by the sleeves of her oversized shirt. Sarah's blood went cold. She'd worked at truck stops long enough to hear the stories. I-10 was a major trafficking route. Everyone knew it. Everyone whispered about it. But seeing it, actually seeing it with her own eyes, was different. The men weren't touching the woman, weren't dragging her. They didn't have to. The way she moved, the way her shoulders hunched, the way she refused to make eye contact with anyone. That was learned behavior. Learned fear. Sarah's hands trembled as she walked toward their booth with menus. "What can I get you folks? Y'all need water?" The man in the expensive shirt barely looked at her. "3 iced teas. We're not staying long." Sarah poured the drinks. When she set the glass in front of the young woman, their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. And in those 2 seconds, Sarah saw everything. Terror. Desperation. The woman's lips moved, forming words without sound. "Help me." Then she looked down fast, before the men noticed. Sarah's heart was slamming against her ribs. She walked back toward the counter, trying to keep her hands steady, trying to act normal. But nothing about this was normal. That woman was dying. You didn't need medical training to see it. Her skin was the wrong color. Her breathing was too fast. Her eyes were unfocused. Heat stroke. Advanced stage. Maybe 45 minutes before organ failure. And those men didn't care. Worse than that, they'd caused it. They'd left her in that hot car until her body started shutting down. Sarah looked around the cafe. A dozen customers, most of them truckers minding their own business. A family near the window. An elderly couple by the door. And in the corner, at the counter, 4 men wearing leather vests with Hell's Angels patches, eating burgers and talking quietly. Sarah had seen them come in 20 minutes ago. Big men, tattooed, intimidating. The kind of men most people crossed the street to avoid. But Sarah's husband, Miguel, had driven trucks for 15 years. He'd told her stories. The Hell's Angels, they're not what people think. Some of the best men I ever met wore those patches. They protect people, especially people who can't protect themselves. Sarah made a decision. She grabbed the coffee pot, an excuse to approach the counter, and walked over to the bikers. Her hands were shaking so hard the coffee sloshed in the pot. She leaned in to refill the lead biker's cup, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "The woman in the corner booth is being trafficked. Zip ties on her wrists. She's dying from heat stroke. They left her in a hot car. She mouthed, 'Help me.' They're leaving soon. Please." The biker's hand stopped halfway to his coffee cup. He was Asian American, maybe mid-40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that suddenly locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He looked at her face for 3 seconds, saw the genuine fear there, saw that she was telling the truth. Then he looked past her toward the corner booth. His expression changed. Something hardened in his face, something cold and professional. He nodded once. Short, decisive. Then quietly, "Keep serving. Act normal. We've got this." Sarah's legs felt weak. She just gambled everything on trusting 4 strangers. But that woman in the corner booth didn't have time for anything else. And sometimes strangers are the only option. Marcus Wolfe Cross set down his coffee cup with deliberate calm. Inside, every instinct from his 8 years with the FBI Human Trafficking Task Force was screaming. He'd seen this exact scenario 37 times in his career. The body language, the control tactics, the medical distress designed to keep the victim compliant. This was textbook human trafficking. Transport phase. High-value target being moved to a buyer. Without turning his head, he spoke quietly to the 3 men next to him. Hammer, Raven, Tiny, corner booth, human trafficking operation. Woman's being transported. We're not letting that happen. David Hammer Rodriguez, former Marine, set down his burger. Thomas Raven Black, ex-long-haul trucker who knew every truck stop on I-10, stopped mid-bite. James Tiny Morrison, 6'4" and 280 pounds of gentle giant, went completely still. All 3 understood immediately. This wasn't a request. This was happening. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed 911, keeping his voice low. "This is Marcus Cross, former FBI badge number 8472193. Desert Star truck stop I-10, exit 104 near Van Horn. Active human trafficking situation. Female victim, early 20s. Visible zip ties. Severe heat stroke. Being transported by 2 males. Suspects planning to leave within minutes. I'm detaining suspects until arrival." The dispatcher's voice came back sharp. "Sir, are you law enforcement?" "Former FBI Human Trafficking Task Force. I know exactly what I'm seeing. Get units here now. We're 15 minutes from Mexico border. If they leave before you arrive, she disappears forever. Units are en route. ETA 12 minutes. Marcus hung up. 12 minutes. He looked at the woman in the corner booth again. Her head was drooping. Her eyes were closing. She wasn't going to last 12 minutes. He turned to his brothers and spoke in the controlled, clipped tone of someone who'd commanded operations before. "Raven, call Vic. Tell him we need every brother within 20 miles at this location. Code red trafficking, now." Raven was already pulling out his phone. "Hammer, block the parking lot exit. Your bike across the lane. They don't leave." Hammer stood up, grabbed his keys, and walked casually toward the door. "Tiny, stand by the entrance. No one exits until police arrive." Tiny moved to position, his massive frame blocking the doorway like a wall. "I'm approaching the booth. We're keeping this calm. We're keeping this controlled. But they don't touch that woman again." Marcus stood up. He was 6 feet tall, solid muscle, with a scar on his left cheek from a knife fight 6 years ago when he saved a trafficking victim and nearly died doing it. He'd left the FBI because the system failed. Because lawyers got predators off on technicalities. Because he'd watched guilty men walk free while their victims disappeared. He joined the Hells Angels because they handled the problems the law couldn't touch. And right now, that woman in the corner booth needed someone willing to cross lines the police wouldn't. In the parking lot, Hammer fired up his Harley, rode it directly across the exit lane, killed the engine, and pocketed the keys. He stood next to it, arms crossed, 6 feet tall, barrel-chested, with demolitions expert written in every controlled movement. Anyone trying to leave would have to get through him first. Inside, Tiny positioned himself just inside the entrance, hands clasped in front of him, expression neutral. But his presence alone made 3 customers change their minds about leaving. They sat back down and waited. Sarah watched all of this happen in less than 90 seconds. The coordination, the precision. These weren't bar brawlers. These were soldiers. Marcus walked toward the corner booth with a coffee pot in his hand, playing the part. Casual, unthreatening. "Need a refill, folks?" Richard Voss, the man in the expensive shirt, looked up with barely concealed irritation. "We're good. Actually, we're leaving." "In this heat? Dust storm's coming in. Radio said visibility's going to 0 by 7. "We'll manage. Come on." Richard gestured to Dale and Kayla to stand. Kayla tried. Her legs buckled. She caught herself on the table, breathing hard. Marcus's eyes locked on her wrists. The zip ties were clearly visible now. He looked at her face, saw the heat stroke, saw the terror, saw the silent plea. His voice came out calm, but there was steel underneath. "Ma'am, are you traveling with these men by choice?" Kayla's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She tried again. One word, barely audible. "No." Richard stepped between them, his voice hard. "She's confused. Heat exhaustion. She's my cousin. Family, business. Not your concern." Marcus didn't move. "Then you won't mind if I ask her directly?" He looked past Richard at Kayla. "Ma'am, do you need help? Are you safe?" Kayla's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. Small. Terrified. But definite. "Yes." Richard's face flushed red. This is ridiculous. We're leaving. He grabbed Kayla's arm, hard, pulled her toward the door. Marcus moved. One step. Blocked the path completely. No, you're not. Richard's eyes went cold. You can't stop us. Yeah, I can. And I just called the police. They'll be here in 9 minutes. So you've got 2 choices. Sit down and wait, or try to leave and see what happens. Your call. Dale, the transporter, started backing toward the door. Tiny stepped directly into his path. Dale froze. Looked up at the 280-pound wall of muscle blocking his exit. Looked back at Richard. Richard was calculating. Marcus could see it. Weighing odds. Looking for exits. Counting opposition. Coming up with 0 good options. The cafe had gone completely silent. Every customer watching now. Every eye on the corner booth. Sarah stood behind the counter, hands pressed against the surface to keep them from shaking, barely breathing. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. Then sirens. Distant but getting closer. Richard's face changed. Defeat flickered across it for just a second before the mask went back up. He released Kayla's arm. She stumbled backward. Sarah was there. Came from behind the counter without thinking, caught Kayla, pulled her away from the men. You're safe. I've got you. You're safe now. Kayla collapsed into Sarah's arms and started sobbing. Texas Highway Patrol arrived at 5:03 p.m. 4 units, lights blazing, officers flooding through the door with weapons drawn. The lead officer, Sergeant Mike Barnes, had worked this stretch of I-10 for 12 years. He'd seen trafficking stops before, but he'd never seen one where the suspects were already subdued, the victim was being comforted by a waitress, and 4 Hell's Angels stood guard like a protective wall. Everyone hands where I can see them, Barnes shouted. Marcus raised his hands slowly, voice calm and clear. Marcus Cross, former FBI badge 8472193. I called this in. Those 2 men, he nodded toward Richard and Dale, are trafficking suspects. Female victim is with the waitress. She has zip ties on wrists. She confirmed she needs help and is not traveling voluntarily. She's also in medical crisis. Heat stroke. She needs paramedics immediately. Barnes looked at Marcus, recognition flickering in his eyes. He'd worked with the Hell's Angels before, on situations the law couldn't handle fast enough. Mr. Cross, step back. Marcus complied, moved away from the booth but kept his eyes on Richard and Dale. Officers approached the 2 men. Hands behind your back. You're under arrest. Richard made one last attempt. This is a mistake. She's mentally ill. We were transporting her to a facility. My cousin. Family matter. Barnes walked up to Kayla, who was still clinging to Sarah. Ma'am, is that true? Kayla lifted her head. Her voice was hoarse, weak, but clear. No, he's lying. They kidnapped me, 18 days ago in Omaha. They're taking me to Salt Lake City. They're going to sell me to a buyer for $15,000. Barnes's expression went hard. That was all he needed. Richard and Dale were handcuffed, searched. Officers pulled out evidence bags and started cataloging. Encrypted phones, $8,000 in cash from Richard's jacket pocket, a photograph of Kayla with the words, Price, $15K, written on the back in red ink, a folded paper with 4 addresses written in Dale's handwriting. Paramedics arrived 3 minutes later. They went straight to Kayla. Blood pressure critically high. Core temperature 104.8 degrees. Severe dehydration. Stage 3 heat stroke. They started an IV immediately, got her on a gurney, began cooling protocols. She wouldn't have lasted another hour, one of the paramedics said quietly to Barnes. Maybe less. Barnes looked at Sarah, who was standing nearby, still shaking. You saw this? Sarah nodded. I saw him drop something in a biker's drink last week. No, wait. She stopped, confused. No, I saw... She took a breath, steadied herself. I saw zip ties on her wrists. I saw her mouth help me. I saw 2 men who didn't care that she was dying. And you told them? Barnes nodded toward Marcus. I told him. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared to call 911 directly. I thought they'd see me, run, take her, so I whispered to the biker at the counter. Barnes wrote everything down. Then he turned to Marcus. You detained them? I confronted them, blocked their exit. My brother secured the perimeter. No violence, no threats, just made it clear they weren't leaving with her. Barnes nodded slowly. FBI is going to want to talk to you. This is bigger than a local stop. Within 30 minutes, the FBI was notified. Within 90 minutes, agents from the El Paso field office arrived. Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez, Human Trafficking Task Force, walked into the truck stop cafe and immediately recognized Marcus. They'd worked 2 cases together years ago. Marcus Cross, she said, extending her hand. Should have known you'd be involved. Marcus shook it. Wrong place, right time. Or right place, right time, depending how you look at it. Rodriguez turned to her team. Interview everyone. I want statements from the waitress, the victim, every witness, every club member present. The investigation moved fast. Rodriguez interviewed Sarah first, taking her through every detail. What she saw, when she saw it, why she acted. Sarah described the zip ties, Kayla's condition, the way Richard had grabbed her arm when they tried to leave. Miss Martinez, Rodriguez said when they finished. You understand you probably saved her life? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I just did what anyone should do. But most people don't. That's the difference. Then Rodriguez interviewed Marcus. He provided a professional assessment. Victim indicators, trafficker behaviors, transport protocols, medical emergency timeline. He spoke like the FBI agent he used to be, clinical and precise. They were moving her to a buyer, Marcus said. High-value transaction. They'd already received $7,500 down payment based on the cash Richard was carrying. Other half on delivery. Standard protocol for this type of operation. How do you know it's $7,500 down? Rodriguez asked. Because $8,000 in Richard's pocket minus pocket money means $7,500 exactly. And I'd bet my bike that when you search his phone, you'll find messages confirming a $15,000 total price with 50% up front. Rodriguez made a note. Anything else? Marcus hesitated, then spoke carefully. There's something else you should check. Richard's too calm. Even now, being arrested, he's not panicking. That tells me he's done this before, successfully. Check for previous victims. Check for previous transactions. I'd bet this isn't his first. Rodriguez's expression changed. I'll look into it. By 7:00 p.m., the investigation had expanded. Forensic teams were going through Richard's and Dale's phones. What they found made Rodriguez call her supervisor immediately. 47 victims over 12 years. 8 currently active cases. 4 trafficking houses across 5 states. 11 network members identified. Financial records showing $1.2 million in total profits. And, buried in Richard's encrypted cloud storage, insurance documents. Not trafficking insurance, life insurance. Rodriguez found Marcus outside the truck stop, where the Hells Angels had set up a protective perimeter. By now, 28 additional bikers had arrived. Brothers who'd turned around when Raven made the call. Brothers who rode through 115-degree heat, because Code Red meant everyone responds. Marcus, I need to show you something, Rodriguez said. She pulled up the documents on her tablet. Life insurance policy on Richard Voss's late wife, Emily Voss. Died 3 years ago of what the death certificate listed as complications from pneumonia. The policy had paid out $180,000. Date of death? Exactly 63 days after the policy was taken out. And tucked in the same encrypted folder was another document. A pending policy on Kayla Marie Foster, taken out 8 days after her kidnapping. Beneficiary, Richard Voss, listed as legal guardian. Value, $250,000. Marcus stared at the screen. He was going to kill her. After the sale. After he collected from the buyer. Then stage an accident, collect the insurance, double profit. We found drafts of the claim report already written. Marcus's jaw tightened. He killed his wife 3 years ago, same method. We're exhuming the body, reopening the investigation. Rodriguez looked at him. You were right. He's done this before. The revelation spread through the truck stop. Sarah, who'd been giving her statement for the 3rd time, overheard agents talking. She walked outside, found Marcus. They were going to kill her, she said, her voice hollow. Even after selling her. They were going to kill her anyway. Marcus nodded. Yeah. If I hadn't said anything, but you did. You saw something wrong and you didn't look away. Sarah looked at the line of motorcycles parked in formation. 28 Hell's Angels, standing guard, making sure Kayla stayed safe until the FBI finished processing the scene. Why did so many of them come? Because that's what we do. Someone calls code red, everyone responds. Doesn't matter if you're heading home, off duty, tired. Human trafficking is priority 1. Above everything. Sarah thought about her daughter Lily, safe at her mother's house, 30 miles away. Thought about what would have happened if someone had taken Lily. Thought about what she'd want someone to do. I'm glad I told you, she said quietly. So am I. The FBI began interviewing other witnesses. Rodriguez wanted to build the strongest case possible, and that meant documenting every failure that let this operation continue for 12 years. Witness number 1. Helen Park, 52, Desert Star truck stop manager. Helen had worked at the truck stop for 6 years. She'd seen thousands of customers. And she'd seen things that bothered her before, but never knew what to do about. About 4 months ago, Helen told Agent Rodriguez, a different group came through. 2 men, 1 woman. Same setup. The woman looked terrified. I remember because she went to the bathroom and stayed there for 20 minutes. When she came out, one of the men grabbed her arm hard. I saw bruises. Did you report it? Rodriguez asked. Helen's hands twisted in her lap. I called the non-emergency line. Told them what I saw. They said unless I witnessed an actual crime, there was nothing they could do. They said couples fight. They said the woman was probably just upset about something. They told me not to waste their time with domestic disputes. How did that make you feel? Like I'd done something wrong. Like I was the problem for noticing. Helen's voice broke. After that, I stopped looking. I stopped paying attention, because what was the point if no one would help? Did you recognize the men? No, but I remember thinking they looked professional, clean, like businessmen, not like what you'd expect criminals to look like. Rodriguez made notes. System failure number 1. Law enforcement dismissed credible report from concerned citizen. Witness number 2. Tom Davidson, 58. Long-haul trucker. Tom had been driving I-10 for 30 years. He'd stopped at Desert Star hundreds of times. He'd been there today, sitting 3 booths away from Richard, Dale, and Kayla. I saw the girl, Tom said. Saw she looked sick. Saw the men weren't helping her. I thought about saying something. Why didn't you? Rodriguez asked. Tom looked down. Because 6 months ago, I did say something. Different truck stop, different girl. Same situation. I reported it to the staff. They called Highway Patrol. Officers came, questioned the men. Men said she was their daughter, showed IDs, said she was just car sick. Officers believed them, apologized for the inconvenience, let them go. And then? Then one of the men came back 3 hours later, found me at a rest stop down the road, told me if I ever interfered in someone else's business again, they'd make sure my truck had an accident. Said they knew my route, knew my company, knew where I lived. Tom's voice was steady, but his hands shook. I've got a wife. Grandkids. I couldn't risk it. Did you report the threat? To who? The same cops who let them go? Rodriguez noted it. System failure number 2. Police accepted false IDs and cover stories without proper investigation, enabling traffickers and silencing future witnesses. Witness number 3. Father Miguel Santos, 61. Priest at St. Mary's Catholic Church, Van Horn. Father Santos had come to the truck stop for dinner after evening mass. He'd seen the confrontation, seen the police arrive, stayed to see what happened. I've been a priest in this area for 18 years, Father Santos told Rodriguez. I've heard confessions from truck stop workers, from truckers, from people who've seen things on this highway. Do you know how many times someone has confessed to me that they saw a woman or child who looked like they were in danger but didn't act? How many? Hundreds. And do you know what they all say? They say they didn't know what to do. They say they were afraid of being wrong. They say they called authorities once before and nothing happened, so why try again? Why do you think that is? Father Santos leaned forward. Because the system has taught people that their observations don't matter, that traffickers are too sophisticated to be caught by regular citizens, that if you speak up, you'll either be ignored or punished. So, people stop speaking up. Rodriguez closed her notebook. System failure number 3. Institutional pattern of dismissing citizen reports created learned helplessness in the community. But there was one more witness Rodriguez needed to interview. Someone who'd tried to stop this and paid the price. Witness number 4. Detective Sarah Cross, no relation to Marcus, 38, El Paso Police Department. Detective Cross had investigated Richard Voss 2 years ago. A business owner in El Paso reported that someone was extorting him, and during the investigation, Cross found connections to human trafficking. She'd built a case, gathered evidence, prepared to arrest. What happened? Rodriguez asked. Cross's expression was bitter. My captain killed the investigation. Said we didn't have enough evidence. Said Richard Voss had connections to city council members. That we'd need ironclad proof before moving forward. Said if we arrested him, and the case fell apart, the department would face a lawsuit we couldn't afford. And you disagreed? I had phone records, financial transactions, witness statements. I had enough for probable cause at minimum, but my captain buried it, sealed the file. And when I pushed back, when I went over his head to the district attorney, I was reassigned, taken off trafficking cases entirely, put on traffic duty for 6 months. As punishment? As a message. Don't investigate people with connections. Rodriguez felt anger building in her chest. System failure number 4. Corruption at supervisory level actively protecting trafficking operations. By 9:00 p.m., the full picture was clear. Richard Voss had been operating for 12 years because the system had failed at every level. Citizens who reported suspicious activity were dismissed. Police who investigated were blocked. Traffickers learned they could operate openly as long as they looked professional and had money for lawyers. The only reason Richard Voss was in custody now was because a waitress whispered to a biker instead of calling 911. At 9:47 p.m., FBI agents raided Richard Voss's home in El Paso. When they arrived, Richard's wife, his second wife, married 18 months ago, answered the door. She had no idea what her husband did. Behind her, agents could see Richard's home office. When they entered with a warrant, they found him in his records, filed neatly in a filing cabinet, documents on 12 other active prospects. Women he was targeting for recruitment. One of the agents noticed something on Richard's desk, a half-eaten sandwich, a glass of iced tea. The television in the corner was on, playing the evening news. Richard had been sitting here eating dinner, watching TV, living a normal suburban life, while Kayla was dying in a truck stop 15 miles away. He was just having a regular evening, the agent said to Rodriguez over the phone. like none of this mattered. Because to him it didn't, Rodriguez replied. This was business. This was routine. That detail would haunt Sarah for months afterward. The banality of evil. The way monsters looked like neighbors. At 11:30 p.m., after all statements were taken and all evidence was logged, Rodriguez gathered her team and the Hells Angels in the truck stop parking lot. The dust storm that had been threatening all day had finally hit. Visibility was near zero. Wind howled across the desert. Everyone was trapped here until morning. Rodriguez stood in front of 28 bikers, all wearing their cuts, all waiting. I need to say something, Rodriguez began. What you did today was not legal procedure. You detained suspects without authority. You blocked exits without warrants. You inserted yourselves into an active situation. The bikers said nothing, just waited. And you saved that woman's life. If you hadn't acted, if you'd waited for us, Richard and Dale would have driven into that dust storm. We'd never have found her. She'd be dead, or worse. Rodriguez paused. So officially, I have to tell you not to do this again. Unofficially? She looked at Marcus. Thank you. Marcus nodded once. Rodriguez continued. We're charging Richard Voss with federal human trafficking, kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and as an accessory to murder in the death of his first wife. Dale Kruger is being charged with human trafficking, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Both men are looking at life sentences without parole. And because of the evidence you helped preserve, because of the way you handled this, our case is airtight. Hammer spoke up. What about the other victims, the 8 active cases you mentioned? We're raiding 4 locations tonight: Denver, Omaha, Salt Lake City, and Boise. We expect to recover all 8 victims by morning. Sarah, who'd been standing at the edge of the group, stepped forward. And Kayla? Is she going to be okay? Rodriguez softened. Physically, yes. The hospital says she'll recover fully. Psychologically. She trailed off. That's going to take time. But she's alive, because you saw something and said something. Sarah felt tears running down her face. She'd been holding them back for 7 hours. Now they came all at once. Marcus walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. Didn't say anything. Just stood there. Present. Steady. The wind howled. The dust storm raged. And inside the truck stop cafe, Sarah, Marcus, and 28 Hells Angels waited for morning. Because sometimes the right thing to do isn't safe. Sometimes it isn't legal. Sometimes it's just trusting that when you speak up, someone will hear you. And sometimes that someone wears a leather vest and rides a motorcycle and refuses to let evil win. The dust storm cleared by 6:00 a.m. Sarah hadn't slept. She'd spent the night in a booth at the truck stop, drinking coffee, staring at Lily's drawing that she'd pulled from her apron pocket, the crayon picture of herself with a halo above her head. My mommy is an angel. Lily had drawn it 3 days ago, before Sarah left for this shift, before everything changed. Marcus sat down across from her as the first light broke through the windows. You should get some rest. Sarah shook her head. I keep thinking about her. Kayla. What happens to her now? FBI will place her in protective custody. Get her medical care, therapy, help her rebuild. That's it? After 18 days of hell, she just gets handed off to another system? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What would you want to happen? Sarah looked at him. I'd want someone to make sure she's actually okay. Not just paperwork okay. Actually okay. I'd want her to know someone cares about what happens to her. Then we make sure of that. By 8:00 a.m., the FBI had transported Kayla to El Paso General Hospital. She was stable, recovering. But when Agent Rodriguez called to update Marcus, she mentioned something that stuck with him. She keeps asking about the waitress, Sarah. She wants to know if Sarah is safe. If those men are going to hurt her for helping. Marcus drove Sarah to the hospital that afternoon. When they walked into Kayla's room, the young woman was sitting up in bed, an IV in her arm, her wrists bandaged where the zip ties had cut into her skin. When she saw Sarah, she started crying. Sarah crossed the room and hugged her. Two waitresses, 9 years apart, who'd saved each other in different ways. "You're safe," Sarah whispered. "They can't touch you now." "I was so scared," Kayla said through tears. "I thought no one would see me. I thought I was invisible." "You were never invisible. Not to me." They talked for an hour. Kayla told Sarah about Omaha, about Derek, who wasn't Derek, about the 18 days. Sarah told Kayla about Lily, about Miguel's death 3 years ago, about working double shifts just to afford school supplies. They weren't strangers anymore. They were sisters in survival. Before Sarah left, Kayla grabbed her hand. "What you did, you didn't have to do that. You could have stayed quiet." Sarah thought about that. "I have a daughter. If someone took her, I'd want someone to help. So how could I not help you?" Over the next 2 weeks, the Hells Angels mobilized, not with violence, with logistics, with the kind of coordinated efficiency that came from years of protecting people. The system failed. Luis, the club member who'd been an accountant before joining the Hells Angels, set up a fund. Within 3 days, chapters across 5 states contributed $42,000. Money for Kayla's housing, therapy, education, and a fresh start. Raven, who'd been a long-haul trucker and knew every safe apartment complex from Texas to Wyoming, found Kayla a 1-bedroom place in El Paso. Secure building, good neighborhood, first year's rent paid in full. Tommy, who'd been a counselor before his own trauma brought him to the club, connected Kayla with Dr. Rebecca Stone, a trauma therapist who specialized in trafficking survivors. Dr. Stone agreed to see Kayla twice a week, payment covered by the fund. Tiny, the gentle giant, showed up at Kayla's new apartment with furniture. Not expensive stuff, just clean, functional pieces donated by club members. A bed, a couch, a table, dishes. "Everyone needs a home," Tiny said simply. "This is yours." And Marcus? Marcus made sure the legal protection was ironclad. He worked with Agent Rodriguez and the district attorney to ensure restraining orders were filed, that Kayla's name was sealed in court documents, that Richard Voss and his entire network couldn't reach her, even from prison. Sarah visited Kayla 3 times that first week, then twice a week after that. She brought groceries, helped Kayla navigate El Paso, introduced her to Lily, who immediately adopted Kayla as Aunt Kayla and gave her a stuffed unicorn because everyone needs a friend. 6 weeks after the rescue, Kayla enrolled in El Paso Community College. Social work degree. She wanted to help other survivors, wanted to turn her trauma into purpose. The Hells Angels Fund covered tuition. 3 months after the rescue, Sarah received a phone call from Vic Lawson, president of the Hells Angels West Texas chapter. He asked her to meet him at the clubhouse. Sarah had never been to the clubhouse before. When she arrived, she found Vic waiting with Marcus, Luis, Raven, Hammer, Tommy, and Tiny. 20 other members stood in the background. "Sarah," Vic began, "we've been talking. What you did at that truck stop, what you saw, and what you chose to do, that's exactly what we're about. Protecting people who can't protect themselves. Standing up when it's hard." Sarah didn't know where this was going. "We run an outreach program," Vic continued. "Anti-trafficking education. We train truck stop staff, restaurant workers, hotel clerks, anyone who might see something. We teach them to spot the signs. We teach them what to do. And we need someone to run that program. Someone who's been there. Someone who knows what it's like to have seconds to make the right call." He pulled out a folder. "The job pays $45,000 a year. Full benefits. Flexible hours, so you can be there for Lily. Your office would be here at the clubhouse. You'd train staff at locations across West Texas. You'd save lives, Sarah. More lives. What do you say? Sarah stared at the folder, at the job offer inside, at the faces of these men who'd become her family without her even realizing it. I don't know anything about running a program like that. Marcus stepped forward. You know the most important thing. You know what it looks like when someone needs help, and you know how to be brave enough to act. We'll teach you the rest. Sarah looked down at her waitress uniform, the apron she'd worn for 2 years, the name tag that said Sarah in faded letters. Then she thought about Lily's drawing. My mommy is an angel. Yes, Sarah said. Yes, I'll do it. The room erupted in applause. Lily, who Sarah hadn't realized was there, came running from the back room and crashed into her mother's arms. Mommy, you're not going to work nights anymore? Sarah held her daughter tight. No, baby. I'm going to be home every night. This is the best day ever. The trial happened 4 months later. Richard Voss and Dale Kruger faced federal charges. The prosecution called 42 witnesses. Sarah testified for 3 hours, describing everything she saw. Kayla testified for 6 hours, walking the jury through every day of her 18-day captivity. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Richard Voss was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Dale Kruger received 25 years. 8 additional network members were sentenced to terms ranging from 8 to 30 years. The entire operation was dismantled. And buried in the evidence presented at trial was the exhumed body of Emily Voss, Richard's first wife. The medical examiner confirmed she hadn't died of pneumonia. She'd been poisoned. Slowly. Over weeks. Richard had collected $180,000 in life insurance and used it to fund his trafficking operation. He'd killed his wife to start a business in human suffering. When Kayla heard the verdict, she collapsed in the courthouse hallway. Not from fear. From relief. Sarah was there to catch her. It's over, Sarah whispered. It's really over. Thank you, Kayla said through tears. Thank you for seeing me. 1 year later, on August 25th, exactly 1 year after the rescue, Sarah stood in front of 47 truck stop employees at a training session in Midland, Texas. She was wearing a Hell's Angels t-shirt that said, Sarah's Watch, Anti-Trafficking Outreach. Her hair was pulled back in the same practical ponytail, but everything else had changed. Show of hands, Sarah said to the room. How many of you have seen something at your job that didn't feel right? A customer who seemed scared, a child who looked too quiet, someone who wouldn't make eye contact. 30 hands went up. Now keep your hand up if you said something. 27 hands went down. Sarah nodded. I get it. I've been where you are. I worked truck stops for years, and I saw things that bothered me, but I didn't always act because I didn't know what to do. I was scared of being wrong, scared of making things worse, scared of retaliation. She walked to the front of the room and pulled up a photo on the screen. Kayla Marie Foster, smiling, wearing a college sweatshirt, standing in front of El Paso Community College. This is Kayla. 1 year ago, she was being trafficked through a truck stop on I-10. 2 men were transporting her to a buyer who'd paid $15,000 for her. They'd left her in a hot car until she was dying from heat stroke. When they brought her inside, I served them iced tea, and I saw zip ties on her wrists. I saw her mouth, help me, and I had maybe 30 seconds to decide. Stay silent or speak up. The room was dead quiet. I spoke up. I whispered to a Hell's Angel sitting at my counter. And because of that, Kayla is alive. 8 other trafficking victims were rescued. An entire network was shut down. and a man who'd been killing and trafficking for 12 years is in prison for life. Sarah paused. But here's what keeps me up at night. 4 months before I saw Kayla, another group came through that same truck stop. Same setup. 2 men, 1 terrified woman. My manager saw it. She called the non-emergency line. They told her she was wasting their time, so she stopped looking. She stopped paying attention. And that woman, we never found her. Sarah let that sink in. This training isn't about making you paranoid. It's about teaching you what to look for and what to do when you see it. Because you're on the front lines. You see more in one shift than most police officers see in a week. And traffickers know that. They count on you not noticing. They count on you staying silent. She clicked to the next slide. The indicators. The red flags. The protocols. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah taught them everything Marcus had taught her. How to spot victims, how to document evidence, how to contact the Hells Angels hotline or FBI without alerting suspects, how to stay safe while helping someone else survive. At the end of the session, a young waitress, maybe 22 years old, raised her hand. What if we're wrong? What if we report something and it's nothing? Sarah smiled gently. Then you were wrong, and that's okay. Because the cost of being wrong is embarrassment. The cost of staying silent when you're right is someone's life. The training program Sarah built became a model. Within 1 year, she'd trained staff at 47 truck stops across West Texas. Within 18 months, 3 other states adopted the program. Within 2 years, Sarah's watch was operating in 12 states. The program directly led to 8 rescues in the first year alone. 8 people who'd been invisible became visible because someone paid attention. And every single one of those 8 rescues started the same way. A truck stop worker noticing something wrong and having the courage to whisper. On a Saturday afternoon in late August, 2 years after the rescue, Sarah and Kayla met for lunch at a small cafe in El Paso. Kayla had just finished her 2nd year of college. Dean's List both semesters. She was volunteering at a crisis center, helping other survivors navigate the system. I got accepted to UT Austin, Kayla said, her eyes bright. Full scholarship, social work master's program. Sarah grabbed her hand across the table. Kayla, that's incredible. I'm scared, Kayla admitted. Austin is far. I've never lived anywhere except Omaha and El Paso. What if I can't do it? Sarah thought about that. About fear. About courage. About the moment 2 years ago when she'd had to choose between safe and right. You know what I've learned? Sarah said. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the thing even though you're terrified. 2 years ago you were dying in a truck stop, and you still found the strength to mouth, "Help me," to a stranger. If you could do that, you can do anything. Kayla's eyes filled with tears. I wouldn't be here without you. And I wouldn't be who I am now without you. We saved each other. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Kayla said, I'm going to Austin. I'm going to get that degree, and then I'm coming back here to work with you, to build this program bigger, to make sure no one else disappears. Sarah smiled. I'll be waiting. That evening, Sarah went home to the small house she'd been able to buy with her new salary. Lily was in the backyard, riding the bike she'd finally gotten for Christmas that year. 9 years old now, smart and fierce and everything good in the world. Marcus's motorcycle was parked in the driveway. He and Sarah had been dating for 6 months, taking it slow, building something real. He was in the kit cross, cooking dinner. When Sarah walked in, he looked up and smiled. How'd lunch go? Kayla got into UT Austin, master's program. That's huge. Yeah. Sarah leaned against the counter, watching him cook. I keep thinking about that day. August 25th, 2 years ago. What would have happened if I'd stayed quiet? Marcus set down the spatula and walked over to her. But you didn't, and that's what matters. I was so scared. I know, but you did it anyway. Sarah pulled Lily's old drawing from her wallet. The crayon picture, faded now, but still clear. My mommy is an angel. She'd kept it for 2 years. A reminder of why she acted. A reminder of what mattered. Lily drew this the day before everything happened, Sarah said. She had no idea how right she was. Marcus looked at the drawing, then at Sarah. She knew her mom was someone who'd stand up when it mattered. Kids see that. Through the window, they could see Lily riding her bike in circles, laughing, safe, free. You know what the hardest part is? Sarah said quietly. Knowing how many people are out there right now. People like Kayla, invisible, suffering, waiting for someone to see them. And knowing that because of you, more people are watching now. More people know what to look for. More people are ready to act. Sarah nodded. It's not enough, but it's something. It's everything to the people you save. This story isn't really about truck stops or trafficking or even about Hell's Angels. It's about the moment when you have to decide, do I look away or do I act? It's about Sarah Martinez, a waitress who was just trying to afford school supplies for her daughter, who saw something wrong and whispered to a stranger. It's about Marcus Cross, who left the FBI because the system failed, who joined the Hell's Angels because sometimes you need people without rules to stop people without rules. It's about Kayla Marie Foster, who survived 18 days of hell and found the strength to mouth 2 words, help me. But mostly, it's about you. Because there are Kaylas everywhere, in truck stops, in restaurants, in parking lots, and hotel lobbies, and quiet suburban streets. People who are invisible, people who are suffering, people who are waiting for someone, anyone, to see them. You don't need a motorcycle. You don't need a badge. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to pay attention, to trust your instincts, to understand that the cost of being wrong is small, but the cost of staying silent when you're right is someone's life. Sarah's watch has trained over 5,000 workers across 12 states. Those workers have directly contributed to 43 trafficking rescues. 43 people who would have disappeared forever if someone hadn't noticed, hadn't acted, hadn't cared. This could be you. The next time you see someone who looks terrified, someone who won't make eye contact, someone with bruises they can't explain, someone being controlled, you have a choice, and your choice matters more than you know. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it. Comment below, have you ever seen something that didn't feel right? What did you do? Or what do you wish you'd done? Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us you stand with Sarah. Tell us you'll watch. Because the world doesn't change because of people who have all the answers. It changes because of people who see something wrong and refuse to stay silent. It changes because of waitresses who whisper warnings, because of bikers who answer the call, because of victims who find the courage to ask for help, and because of people like you who are willing to be the one who notices. Don't drink that. Run now. Help me. I see you. 3 whispered phrases that saved lives. What will you whisper when it matters?